Hello, hello, hello. Hey, fun people. Welcome back to Everything Aja. If you are new here, hello, welcome. My name is Aja, and here on Everything Aja, I help parents and teachers prevent teaching burnout when it comes to reading. And today we're going to talk about how to avoid teaching burnout this year, even if you are teaching homeschool. So introduce yourself down below in the comments. I love getting to know you. And I'm ready. Y'all ready? We are doing what we call Chat It Up Saturdays. Whoop, whoop. And we are back. We took a little break at the end of 2022, and we are kicking it back off. So we will be doing this each and every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Hello, hello, hello down below. Hey, hey, hey. Say good morning, good morning, good morning. Don't forget to introduce yourself. Let us know, what are your thoughts. Have you ever felt burned out? I feel like at some point in time, maybe you are there now. We have all felt this feeling. So just raise your hand. Just raise your head if you have ever experienced burnout. And today we're gonna be particularly talking about teacher burnout, what causes it, and what to do so that we do not have to experience that this year. Good morning. Good morning. I see one thumbs up. Awesome, awesome, and awesome. Well, for those of you guys that do not know who I am, let me just introduce myself just a little bit. My name is Aja. I'm an experienced curriculum specialist. That means I was literally an administrator over kindergarten all the way through fifth grade. I am currently an educational consultant that works with elementary teachers all over the US as well as homeschool teachers. I have over a decade of I have over a decade of experience in education, with all grades from pre-K all the way through fifth grade. A little bit about my educational background is I do have a specialist in early childhood education. I have my reading endorsement. I'm also certified in diagnosing and correcting mathematics and reading behaviors. And of course, all of my science and reading phonics people, I am also Orton Gillingham trained. Hey, hey, good morning, good morning, good morning. Well, I am so excited that you guys are here today, because today's topic aligns perfectly with my mission here on Everything Aja. And my mission is to help over 500 teachers and even homeschool moms create a life that they enjoy, creating a life that's worth living with high achieving children. I help them go from the feeling of burnout and overwhelmed in order to feel free, confident, and prepared. Because, man, when I tell you, burnout is real. And so that's what we are going to be honing in on today's Chat It Up Saturday. Like I said, we do this each and every Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, same place, same time. And today we're talking about avoiding teacher burnout. So I'm ready. Thumbs up down below if you are ready to get started. Now, before we start talking about how to avoid teacher burnout, we have to address what is teacher burnout. And I absolutely love this definition of burnout. And it says that teacher burnout is a condition in which an educator or even homeschool parent has exhausted. That word exhausted is so extreme. So let me just say the whole thing without stopping. I just like to emphasize on some words. But it says a condition in which an educator has exhausted the personal and professional resources necessary to do the job. And I love that definition because it's so true that when you reach the feeling of burnout, that means you have done everything possible in your own capabilities, to do your job, to teach well, to educate your young ones. And so in order to avoid this, it seems like it's just so quote unquote overwhelming, right? And according to this definition, that it says that at this point you've exhausted all of your resources. And so when we talk about burnout, what are the side effects of burnout? How do you know that you have reached this point? How you what do you feel like when you have reached the state of teacher burnout? Well, here are some of the many side effects to teacher burnout. Of course, there's more out there. And let me know down below in the chat box if you have any additional side effects to teacher burnout. But you know that you have reached the state of burnout when you feel stressed. When you feel tired or exhausted, you may be experiencing physical effects like weight loss or weight gain. Maybe you have unexplained hair loss. You're feeling sad. You feel overwhelmed. You're having trouble sleeping. And how you view teaching has drastically changed. It used to be enjoyable, it used to be something that you got up every morning and smiled about. And now you've reached the point where you dread it. It just seems exhausting. And so when you find yourself at this place, you may identify with the term burned out. You may identify with, okay, now I have reached teacher burnout. And so these are some of the side effects. But going back to that definition of burnout from the National Education Association stated that you've not only exhausted your resources, but you exhausted the necessary resources necessary to do your job. So when you have exhausted all of your resources in order to do the job, that means that something has to give, something is falling short. And so what happens when you can no longer do your job effectively? What happens when the job that you used to love or you used to be so passionate about has become not has went from a career to a job, has went from something you woke up every morning and smiled about doing to something you dread doing? I'm not the only one on here that has experienced burnout. When you go from loving it to hating it, you some things start to happen. So what are those things? You physically and emotionally start experiencing long-term repercussions. That if you don't address your burnout right at the beginning, you'll end up experiencing long-term physical repercussions like the hair loss, like the weight gain. You will physically might find physical ailments or diseases or things wrong with your body because of the stress, because you are dealing with all of those things piled on top of your table. You may physically start to feel sick. The next thing is the emotional aspect, because you now are mentally bogged down. You have no free time for yourself. There's no time to pour back into yourself. You will experience long-term emotional repercussions. And so this will allow you to start taking shortcuts. Instead of sitting there and actually planning out lessons, you just pop on a movie. And when you start to take shortcuts with your job, in your instruction, then your children will begin to suffer because they're not getting the quality of education that they need, especially if you're like me and you're teaching in a Title I school, or you're dealing with children that are behind grade level or are struggling readers. You will notice that the moment you start taking shortcuts, their learning gap will start to widen and they'll start to suffer even more. And this time, their suffering is on you. And when left unchecked, when you continue to be burned out, when you continue to be boggled down, when you're continuously going through this cycle over and over again, you'll end up wanting, or will do it, but you'll end up wanting to quit teaching. Do I have anybody that's even had that thought? You're like, man, I've been thinking about quitting. I know Keisha down below in the chat box, she was like, I was about to leave elementary altogether. But like when you were experiencing all the burnout that we were just talking about, that That is what happens when we're not able to do the thing that we signed up to do, when we are sitting there just sitting in the side effects of burnout, when we are sitting in the stress, the sadness, the overwhelmed, when we are experiencing insomnia. Our mindset has changed when it comes to teaching, when we're tired, exhausted, and then actually physically starting to change. We then start thinking about the escape plan. Well, if I just quit altogether, then all of this stress will go away. And although you said 100% facts, although that solution does make sense, sometimes that's not what's best for you or your children, right? Sometimes you are literally what they need. And also, you don't even realize that you need the children just as much as the children need you. And so, instead of quitting something that you're passionate about, and instead of leaving something that means so much to you, instead, let's address the burnout and get rid of the burnout. And so, in order to get rid of the burnout, in order to remove the burnout out of your life, we have to think about the causes of burnout, right? Because you cannot remove the burnout without going to the root cause. Like, if you think about it, if you have weeds in your garden and you want to you want to get rid of those weeds, you have to go to the roots and pull those roots out in order for the weeds to stop growing. And what typically happens is we cut the weeds off at the head. We're like, oh my goodness, this one thing is causing me too much stress, so I just won't do that one thing. Well, the thing with education and the thing with being on this cycle is it's going to just replace itself with another thing. Hello, do you have you ever felt like it's just one thing after another after another? And that's because you haven't dealt with the roots of the problem. Instead, just like weeds, you're just cutting the flower off, but you never pulled out the weeds. And so, when you're thinking about burnout, instead of just removing one thing off your plate and getting it replaced with something else, let's address the causes of burnout so that we can remove those. And then removing those will then allow you to avoid burnout. Y'all following me? You're following me? So comment down below. What are your thoughts? What actually causes burnout? I want you to just think about experiencing burnout, being in that place of burnout, being in the place of feeling overwhelmed, sad, stressed, unvalued, underappreciated, being in a place where you feel like everything you're doing is just for nothing. And then I want you to think about, okay, what actually caused that burnout? Maybe you can be 100 and say, I don't know what caused it. I don't even know what the root cause was, and that's okay. And that's what we are going to talk about today. But I want you to kind of comment down below. Let me know when you were burned out or are burned out now. What are some of the causes that led to your burnout? And so I'm going to list some of the major causes. I loved Talkspace.com listed. She did a great, it was a blog. She did a great job of kind of like listing some. So I took some of hers and it was very insightful, very insightful. And then I also added some more to that. So let's talk about some of the major root causes to burnout. All right. So I'm gonna make me smaller. Okay, so one of the causes of burnout is the curriculum that you are using. So the guide of what to teach, when to teach, that guide may be very overwhelming. For example, a lot of curriculums require the teacher to do a lot of digging for other resources. Like, the curriculum may address, phonics, but it doesn't necessarily address reading comprehension or vice versa. And you find yourself in a place where you are having to supplement a lot of your instruction. And that over supplementing, all of that extra time to, kind of like beef up the curriculum is leading you to burnout because you're always trying to find other resources and find other things that your children need. You realize the curriculum that you're using doesn't have everything that your children actually need. He said, not enough time to plan. There we go. And the number of preps for elementary school. It is a lot of preparation. It definitely is. So I am with you right there. And we're about to talk about the planning time. So that is actually a huge one. You see that's right there at the bottom. So you mentioned that one. Not enough planning time was definitely one of the biggest reasons of burnout. And we're gonna even go further in that in just a little bit. But Keisha nailed it spot on that planning time or the lack of planning time also leads to teacher burnout. And you probably know you've experienced it. Hello. I know Keisha and I are not the only ones by ourselves, right? Another thing is behavior. Not only the behavior of children, but also the behavior of parents was another cause that was stated to lead to burnout. And you especially find this in schools that have underprivileged children or children with a lot of poverty. You see a lot of behavior, and so that was another reason that was listed as a reason for burnout. Another thing is unrealistic goals. Unrealistic goals. Do I have anybody that has experienced unrealistic goals? For example, man, you're teaching, let's say, for fifth grade, fourth grade, right? And I actually I use myself for example. When I was teaching fifth grade, I had a class, and I've actually had a few classes, but I had a every year. I had kids that were on kindergarten, first grade levels. I was in 100% Title One school, and none of the kids read on grade level. Not only did they not read on grade level, they were like years behind grade level. And the expectation was for them to get proficient on the state standardized tests. And so when you think about that, it's like, okay, they're coming multiple grade levels behind, but then you want me to catch them up and to grade level in order for them to then get caught up to proficient. But I only have 1 year of doing that. And research tells us that within a year, a child can only gain a year and a half amount of growth, meaning that if a child's already behind, the odds are that they will always be behind, because no matter how far they get ahead, there's just not enough time to catch them up. And so that's what the research shares are the odds. And so a lot of times our administrators, the domino effect creates unrealistic goals and expectations of you as the educator. Even at homeschool, with you as the parent or a tutor. I have one client, and she's a tutor, and she's tutoring a third grader that's reading on a first grade reading level, and she's expected to get her to proficient in less than 6 7 8 months. And so you do have unrealistic expectations, and when you have unrealistic expectations, that will lead to burnout, because you're literally pressuring yourself to do the impossible. You're pressuring yourself. It can happen. It can happen. Don't get me wrong. It can happen. I did it, so I know you can do it. It can happen, but it often leads to experiencing teacher burnout, and that's just the fact. Hey Angel, you said too much is expected to teach and resources expected to use. Come on now, not enough time to teach it or use them all. Yes, yes. In fact, that is one mistake that so many people do. I actually talk about it in my workshop with the resources, using too many resources or none. And because what ends up happening, and hint hint, I have a video coming out tomorrow on outdated teaching tips, and that's actually one of them. Because as the teachers start to try to use all of their resources, they end up getting overwhelmed, and then what ends up happening is they don't use any of them. they say, oh, this is too much. So because this is too much, I'm just not going to use any at all. And I'm going to stick to what I've always been doing. So absolutely. I see Keisha saying, hey, Angel. I love it. I love it. I love it. And then you said, that too much is expected to teach. So we just talked about the expectations. Absolutely. And then you address one with the resources. I put poor working conditions, so that hit the resources as in funding. A lot of schools do have limited funding, and because they have limited funding, teachers are expected to use their personal funds for their classroom. Do I have anybody? I know I'm not the only one. Hello. Have my paycheck went right back into my classroom because we did not have those resources. So, in order for them to have what they needed to succeed, and by them I mean my children, then I then had to make up for it, right? So, you have those poor working conditions, and this can lead to burnout. Not only that, poor working conditions can also reflect on admin or leadership. That if you don't have a good foundation from the top of the pyramid, then the bottom of the pyramid, where the teachers that are directly interfering and working with the children, they will feel overwhelmed because of this domino effect. And I've been in the domino effect, and I've been on different levels. I've been on the classroom level and the administrator level and the parent level, and so I've seen all the different aspects of this whole domino effect of the pressure, and really that goes back to unrealistic expectations. And so when we're talking about these causes of burnout and how to actually remove the core parts and the reasons of burnout, remember we cannot prevent burnout until we address the causes. So how do we get off this wheel of burnout? How do we literally stop this vicious cycle of teacher burnout? We have to do something in order to address the actual causes. Go back to the weed and root analysis, because I think I'm just going to use that the rest of today. Okay. But going back to that analysis, if we do not address the roots of the problem, then the problem's going to always exist and just like a weed regrow the tree. I mean, regrow the leaves. And this is because the roots were never removed. So in order to get off this wheel of burnout, we have to address the causes. And so going back to our causes, these are what I call burnout uncontrollables. That especially if you are teaching in a actual school building, there are three things that cannot be controlled at all. You have no control over how you are valued. You can't control how other people value you. You can control how you value yourself. That's the only thing you can control. But you cannot control the way other people see you. You also cannot control your working conditions. Unless you quit and leave, but remember that was what burnout actually leads to. But going to the root cause, staying in your current condition, you have no control over the funding of your school. You have no control over the administration. You have no control over the leadership. Even if you're doing homeschool, you have no control over that aspect. You also have no control over the behavior, meaning you cannot control what your children do. You can control how you respond. You can control the environment that they're in, and make it conducive to them not acting out, but you ultimately cannot control them. They have a mind of their own, and they're going to do what they want to do. Hello. You also cannot control parents, just like children. They have a mind of their own, and they're gonna do what they want to do, right? Like I feel like, hey, we've all seen it, we've all been there. We wish we could control other people, but ultimately we do not have control. So if you cannot control the behavior, you cannot control the working conditions, and you cannot control being valued, what can you control? Now, if you are teaching in a school setting, then you also have no control over your curriculum. A lot of times your administrator and your administration and even your district will give you the curriculum that you will use. Now, if you're in a homeschool setting, then you do have control over your curriculum, and you can always choose to do another homeschool curriculum. Whoop, whoop. So there is like a little bit of shout right there. If you are a homeschool parent, you do have control over your curriculum. But all these other things listed in yellow, you do not have control over. And so let's talk about what you do have control over. You have control over two things, and that is simply your unrealistic goals and not enough planning time. If you notice, the planning time was mentioned twice. Keisha said not enough time to plan. Angel said, hey, not enough time to teach, or but time is one thing that you guys even address that seems like it is a big issue. But in actuality, we actually have control over this. And so that's what we're going to talk about, is how to use that, how to use what we can control in order to prevent burnout. So although some of these roots we cannot touch and we are not able to like take them out the ground, we can control our goals and make our goals realistic goals, and we can control having enough planning time. Now you might say, okay, wait. My administration gives us 45 minutes of planning time, and they spend all of that time having us in meetings and XYZ, and we're always in PLCs, and then they give us all these meetings that we have to do, and we have parent meetings during that time. I don't even have time to plan. And so we're going to address that in 1 second. Just give me a second. Give me a second to address that. But first, let's talk about the goal setting. So we talked about that you actually have control over setting unrealistic goals. Now, you don't have control over other people's unrealistic goals, but you do have control over your goals. And so I'm always one that says set high goals, but you also want to make sure that those high goals are actually obtainable. Make sure that your goals can actually be reached. And so one thing that I'm going to tell you to do is to set two types of goals. I want you to set goals for not only your children, but also to set goals for yourself. When you're dealing with teacher burnout, like we talked about earlier, the side effects of burnout not only affect your children, but they affect you. They affect your mental health and they affect your physical health. I did a video a little while ago, like a few weeks ago, about self-care for teachers. And in that video, I talked about some self-care things that I guarantee you've never heard before, because they are totally different than what is out there. Whoop, whoop. But we talked about ways that you can use self-care for yourself, because what ends up happening is you get burned out, and then that's why you see teachers, take their lives, quit the profession, leave, they're miserable. You see them and you're like, oh, you are not good for children. And this is why, because they're lashing out because of the burnout that they are experiencing. And so in order to prevent this, and in order to get rid of this, that's why I'm encouraging you to not only to set goals for your children, but also to set goals for yourself. And so I love this picture. It says, dream big, set goals, and take action, right? Also down below in the chat box, after you watch this video, now we're not done. We're not done. We're not done. But I did just drop the self-care video down below in the chat box. So you guys can watch that after. All right, so going back to setting goals, you want to set two types of goals: long-term goals and short-term goals. And so, yes, your administration probably gives you some long-term goals. They're wanting, all your children to pass that state standardized test. And if they're primary, if you teach primary grades, then they're wanting all your children to read on grade level and be proficient, right? Hello. And that's a normal long-term goal. You see that goal at the beginning of every year. If you're on Teaks, when you do goal setting with your administration, they're probably going to say something to that effect, right? And so you can keep that long term goal at the beginning, but I want you to also set short term goals. So short term goals can be in the form of 6 week goals, 9 week goals, or even 4 week goals. So you can set monthly goals, or unit goals, or semester goals. And then what you will do is adjust your long-term goals based on how your children are doing short term. So let me just share an example. So Susan, right? Susan is a third grader reading on a first grade, beginning first grade level. Okay, that's Susan. Hey, Susan. All right, so and you guys are gonna do this with me. It's gonna be a little interactive. Just getting ready. Hey, Bonnie. All right, so Susan is a third grader reading on a beginning first grade level. Okay. So she's about two, right now we're in the middle of the year, middle of the year. This is January, and we have our third grader. Now, of course, your administration started the school year off with Susan needs to pass the third grade state standardized test. This is her first year testing, but she's coming to you 2 grade levels behind. And although you have been teaching, right now we're at the middle of the year and she's still 2 years behind. So I want you to set a short term goal down below in the chat box. What would be a short term goal for her? So, right now it's January. Let's say where we would want her to be towards the end of February. So right now, like I said, she's beginning of first grade. So we've made a little bit of growth, but she's still 2 years behind. And so now we're setting a new short term goal for her to take her throughout, January until the end of February. So let me know down below what would be some of your a short-term goal that you would give for Susan. Do. So I'm gonna give some while y'all like keep typing. Just keep typing. And so one short term goal, and you can literally use your data to really do like a data analysis, but you may find that Susan's data shows some sort of deficit, because in order for Susan to be 2 years behind, that means there's probably a phonics deficit. I guarantee you there is a phonics deficit in there, that she was not able to master in her primary grades. And so my short term goal would be to look at the data, and now I'm going to teach explicit phonics instruction. I'm probably going to be doing some syllable division with her and going over just decoding skills, because I need to catch her up and close that learning gap. And so a short term goal would be for her to master, depending on where the data shows, I want her to master X amount of skills that are explicit phonics skills. Okay. So then, now that I have a short term goal for her, so she has a phonics based short term goal, right? I'm going to now adjust her long term goal, because based on her short term goal, right? Right. My short term goal for her is about phonics, and I'm going back and reteaching her sounds. There's no way at this point of the school year I can successfully say or believe or hope that she's going to magically become proficient on the state standardized test in 4 months. If in 2 months I'm trying to literally close this gap. Now, I can close the gap and narrow that gap by honing in on the phonics skills that she's missing. I can certainly narrow that gap. But now she does not have that whole entire year to make a year and a half worth of growth. And so now, realistically, if she's at the beginning of a first grade level, I know that I can fill in those gaps and at least catch her to the end of first grade, which is the beginning of second grade. And so now I have to adjust my long term goal. And what ends up happening is we get to the end of the school year and we never adjusted our long term goal. We kept it unrealistic. And then we get upset. We get boggled down. We feel like we're failures because we never adjusted the long-term goal. And so especially right now, to have anybody that you said that sounds great, awesome. Those of you guys that are in the middle right now in January, there should be some sort of data that you just did with your children. There's the map test, star, iReady, and there's so many diagnostic tests that are literally rolling out during this time of year. And so I want you to practice this so that you will not experience burnout. I want you to adjust your long-term goals so that when you get to the end of the year, you will feel prosperous because they were actually able to hit some of these goals. So then I would adjust the long-term goal to now fit the short-term goal. So if I'm going back teaching phonics within the next 2 months, realistically by the end of the year, I can definitely get her to second grade reading level. Easy. Easy. She can do a year's worth of growth from now until May, especially with the short-term goal of phonics. All right, Bonnie said her goal. She said, I would go back and help her learn sounds, blends, syllabication, and decoding skills. We are on the same page. Whoop, whoop. Awesome. Nice to know that we have some efficient goal setters. I love it. I love it. The next burnout, controllable, the next thing that you actually can control to avoid teacher burnout was the planning time. And as Keisha and Angel said earlier, that planning time or having lack of planning time was one of the major reasons that they have experienced teacher burnout. And that is something that, believe it or not, we do have control over. And I loved this quote from Talkspace, and it said more than half of teachers in 2022 said that their time for planning was significantly impacted due to staff shortage and a host of other reasons. And so with this, you have the domino effect of your administration that you're not able to get your planning time in because there's a teacher shortage now. You can't have planning at all because kids aren't going to art, they're not going to PE, the teacher's not there, so you have to have them. So now you have to sacrifice that time. There's more meetings, so now you have to use your planning time in order to do that. Now none of that is are controllables. You're right, that part is not control. We don't have control over it, right? But the second part explains the impact of it. It says if teachers don't have planning time at school, then they have to make up for it at home. And when they're making up for it at home, this is what impacts your work life balance. And this, my friends, is what leads to teacher burnout. In fact, teacher burnout is the number one reason for the teacher shortage. So, if we wanted to address the teacher shortage, that's leading us to having a lack of planning time, then we really need to address not having enough planning time to that so that it will not impact our work life balance. And so you see this cycle now that we're unfolding, looking at the data, looking at the survey that's out there. And so now it has us thinking, okay, what can we do for that? How can we actually control time? We can't control how many hours we have in the day. We cannot control how many hours we have in order to teach. And so, how can we actually control time? Well, we cannot give ourselves more time, but we can do autopilot our instruction. And so, this is how I teach so many clients how to teach smarter, not harder. And so, what you can do in order to get your planning time, in order to have that work life balance, is you can autopilot your instruction. And what I mean by that, I mean have an instruction that doesn't require you to spend so much time planning. In fact, the average teacher spends over 12 hours per week planning. That includes researching lessons, actually creating lessons, and preparing materials for your lessons. So, with 12 hours per week, when you do the math over a lifespan, that's over 2 years of time wasted in every teacher's life on planning lessons. And so, what I teach so many of my clients is make your instruction run on autopilot. If you don't have to spend so much time planning, then all of those extra hours of time that you're planning now, you get to keep for your work life balance. You get to keep for your mental health. You get to keep for your family, for your children. And so you're not on this hamster wheel. And so this is the key. I'm telling y'all right now, I'm giving you all the tips. This is the key to preventing burnout, is to make your instruction run on autopilot, because you can't control those other things, but you can control your instruction. You can control how you teach it. So you have certain requirements from your school, or requirements of what you have to teach. However, how you do that can be run on autopilot. Woo, woo. Do I have any emojis? Like, let me know. Are you ready? Are you excited? Thumbs up. How you feel about that? Like, I know I had some aha moments. Like, I can make my instruction run on autopilot. Absolutely, absolutely. And so I want to teach you how you can do that and show you exactly how we can prevent this thing called burnout this week. I'm sorry, not this week, but I want to show you how we can prevent this thing called teacher burnout. I see some thumbs up. I see some raised hands. Woo, woo. So you guys are ready. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So we can control our instruction and how we attack burnout. So I want to formally invite you to our next week's challenge, Preventing Burnout. So I'm going to help you literally create and reset this year so that you do not experience teacher burnout. And so coming up next week here on YouTube, I will be live at 7 o'clock p.m. each and every day to show you and walk you through this even further. I'm going to take your hand and we're going to go through this concept step by step by step. And so on Monday, I'm going to show you how to utilize last year in order to prevent burnout this year. And so we're going to take, what worked, what didn't work last year, and we're going to use that to goal set for this year. And just like we talked about earlier, unrealistic goals is one thing that leads to burnout. So in the training, it is very, very interactive. You guys know I love very interactive trainings, and so get ready to like really, really apply this in your life. Like, come ready to learn and ready to receive and take action. The more that you take action, the more you'll actually be able to understand what I'm talking about, and really not only even understand but experience the freedom, experience the confidence, experience actually feeling prepared for instruction. And so we're going to do some realistic goal setting in that training here on Monday. On Tuesday, meet us back here on YouTube, because we're going to talk about how to use self-care routines in order to prevent burnout. And so we're going to talk about, I know I shared you earlier the self-care routines for teachers, but now we're going to take those routines and actually apply those routines to your life. So like, how do you not just listen to what I'm saying, but we're actually going to do the goal setting, that personal goal setting that we talked about today. We're going to take that and actually apply it to your life. And so it tell you it's even beneficial, even if you're not a teacher. You're like, oh, I need this. I need this. But yeah, we're going to take those self-care routines and actually literally apply them to our lives so that we're not experiencing burnout. So we're going to set some boundaries in our personal lives on Tuesday. On Wednesday, woo, 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 woo. Wednesday is the big day. We're going to do a vision. That's really there we go. Something more exciting. Wednesday is our vision board party. Woo, woo, woo. And on Wednesday, we will be live and we're going to create digital vision boards. So you will walk away with a digital vision board. Every single day, you're walking away taking action. Every day next week, we are taking action. And so On Wednesday, we're just gonna have a vision board party. What we are expecting and wanting out of this year for not only ourselves but also our children. And so we're gonna do that on Wednesday. We're gonna take those goals and what we set in place Monday and Tuesday, and now we're going to put it on a vision board because what we visually see and speak out. Those now become our goals and actionable goals and things that we will be working towards. And hey, I know I've done vision boards, and what I put on that board, I end up getting. And so I'm really, really excited for Wednesday. On Thursday, I just didn't like that music. I might get some softer music. I need to get some better music, y'all. But on Thursday, we will be resetting our reading block. So we're taking all of those self-care routines, all the goal settings that we have done. And now we're actually going to apply those to our reading instruction. Because in order to prevent burnout and really take those weeds out of your life, we have to now apply those to your instruction. And so this is the first step to now having your reading instruction run on autopilot. And so now we're going to talk about now how to reset your semester too. And I have anybody that's already a month in and your kids are wild, they're crazy, you don't want to be there, you want to go back to winter break, and nobody wants to be there. Well, join me next Thursday as we reset our reading block. And then on Friday, whoop, 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 I need more sound effects, but hopefully I'm making the sound effects for you. So Friday is our free workshop. This is my signature workshop, and I'm going to teach you how to teach reading without teacher burnout. I'm giving it to you explicitly. I talked to you today that the planning time that you guys mentioned was one of the biggest reasons that you personally felt burnout. It's not just you, it's all teachers everywhere, even homeschool parents, that creating the time of lesson planning becomes the number one reason that they feel burned out. It becomes the very thing that is holding them back and making them want to quit. You feel like you're always drowning. You're on a hamster wheel of doing trying to just figure it out on your own, and it just seems like you're not going anywhere. Well, join me on Friday as I show you my 3 secrets of how to get your reading instruction to truly run on autopilot so that you don't experience a burnout and you can actually teach reading with ease. Reading will become easier because you're not always spinning your wheels. And like I always say, teach smarter, not harder, right? And so in that workshop, I will teach you how to do that. The link to officially join the workshop is pinned at the top of the comment box. You can just click that and you will be literally be registered for that burnout. We will be in an intimate setting on Zoom, so you'll have the opportunity to get to know me even more. Whoop, whoop. And of course, for all the other days, everything's right here on YouTube. You can actually set your notifications to notify you each and every day when we go live next week. I see Bonnie said, I'm excited about next week. Oh yeah. Woo, I'm so glad you're excited. I am too, girl. I'm really excited to really help you guys prevent burnout so that we don't have to quit something we love in order to protect our mental health, right? And so you can do both. You can make a bigger impact and still have your independence. And so join me next week. Your next 2 steps is to sign up for the workshop and turn on your notifications for the challenge. You just say, me too. I love it. I love it. I love it. And so sign up for the workshop. The link is down there in the description. I will see you guys next week. And nothing is exciting to do by ourselves. So let's just really make this a party. I ask that you invite your friends, all your teaching friends, all your parents that you know, even if they are a working parent and not a full-time homeschool parent, their kids still need to learn, And so invite them to the workshop next week and invite them to do the challenge with you. Say, hey, do this preventing burnout challenge with me next week. It's free. All of this is free. And so, hey, Let's teach smarter, not harder. And I will see you guys Monday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And like I said, I'm gonna drop a bonus video tomorrow about the outdated teaching tips. So look out for that as well. All right, you guys. Thanks so much. Hope you guys are avoiding burnout this year. And I will see you guys on Monday. Don't forget, sign up for the workshop. Oh, you said 7 p.m. Yes, 7 p.m. Woo, woo, woo. See you guys on Monday.